All right, today we're jumping headfirst into one of the internet's wildest and, honestly, most captivating theories. We're talking about the story of a massive, forgotten global empire called Tartaria. An entire civilization that, according to some, was deliberately wiped from our history books.
But before we get into all that, I want you to do something for me. It's super simple. Wherever you are right now, just look down. Because if this theory is true, the very grounds you're standing on, the streets you walk down every single day, well, they might be hiding an absolutely massive secret.
And it all kicks off with this one kind of nagging question that you might have even noticed yourself. Why is it that so many of those beautiful old buildings, you know the ones, seem like they're sinking? They've got windows and doors that are half buried below the street? What's up with that? Okay, so how on earth do we get from some buried windows to a whole lost empire? Well, here's how we're going to break it down. We'll talk about this forgotten global empire, then check out the supposed evidence in our cities, we'll get into the Great Mud Flood, and then the idea of an intentional cover-up. Of course, we'll look at the official record, and finally we'll ask why this story is just so compelling to so many people.
Right, so the answer that this theory gives for all those buried buildings? It's an empire that you have almost definitely never read about in a history class, Tartaria.
So in your standard history books, Tartary is just this kind of vague name for a big chunk of Asia. But in this theory, oh no, it's a whole different story. We're talking about a super advanced global civilization that was thriving just a few hundred years ago, and then, poof, gone, intentionally erased. And get this, we're not just talking about some local kingdom. The idea is that Tartaria was everywhere, a peaceful worldwide society that had figured out free energy. They call it atmospheric electricity. And the key part, the really big claim, is that it didn't just fade away. It was taken down, violently and on purpose.
So you're probably thinking, okay, where's the proof for this epic empire? Well, according to the theory's followers, you don't need to go digging in some remote desert. The evidence is all around you, hiding in plain sight in our cities.
This really is the heart of it. Think about it. From New York to Moscow, from London to Sydney, you see these incredible old-world buildings, right? And so many of them have these beautiful arches and windows that just dive right into the sidewalk, as if the ground level used to be way lower.
And here's the bombshell claim. Those aren't basements. They're not cellars. They're the original ground floors, the actual first story of these buildings. Which means the entire ground level of our cities was once way, way lower. So the big question is, what in the world happened?
Well, the theory has an answer, and it's not a gradual change. It's one single, massive cataclysm that literally reshaped the entire planet.
They call it the Great Mud Flood. The idea is that sometime back in the 19th century, some kind of mysterious global event happened. It unleashed this wave of liquefied earth, mud, silts, you name it, that just swamped cities all over the world, burying the entire Tartarian civilization under tons and tons of gunk.
Okay, but a massive natural disaster is one thing, right? This is where the theory goes from a mystery to a full-blown conspiracy. Because it alleges that what came after the mud flood was maybe the biggest cover-up of all time.
So here's the alleged sequence of events. First, the mud flood buries everything. Then, a new group, a new power elite, swoops in and takes control. They dig out the tops of these incredible Tartarian buildings, call them their own, and basically invent a new history. And the whole time, they're burying the secret of that free energy tech so they can build the world we live in now, one based on scarcity and control.
So who's supposedly behind this massive reset? The theory points to some, let's say, familiar names in the conspiracy world. You've got your shadowy New World Order, powerful global financiers, the world's royal families, and even, yes, the academic institutions that write our history books. All of them, supposedly, in on it together.
This is a really interesting part of the theory. You know those huge world fairs from back in the day? The ones with the gigantic, beautiful buildings that were supposedly temporary? Well, proponents argue they weren't temporary at all. They were the actual dugout ruins of Tartaria put on display for a new population who didn't know any better and then torn down to get rid of the evidence for good.
Okay, so that's the whole sprawling theory in a nutshell. But what's the official story? What do mainstream historians and archaeologists say when they look at the exact same evidence?
And this is where things get really interesting, seeing the two explanations right next to each other. So those buried buildings? The theory says global mud flood. Mainstream history says, well, actually, cities just raise their street levels over time. For things like sewers and new roads, it's a much slower process. That name, Tartary? The theory says advanced global empire. Historians say, nope, it was just a name Europeans used for a huge part of Asia they didn't know much about. And all that beautiful architecture? Not inherited from a lost civilization, but very well-known styles like neoclassical and Gothic revival that were all the rage back then. So, when you ask the experts, the academic consensus is pretty clear. They classify the Tartaria theory as pseudo-history. Basically, a really compelling story that's built by connecting dots that aren't actually related and fueled by a real distrust of the official narrative.
All right, so if the experts have dismissed it, then why is this story still around? In fact, why does it seem to be getting more popular? What makes it so powerful?
I think it's because it's about so much more than just buried buildings, right? It's really about questioning everything we've been told. It offers this incredible, epic story that says our past was way more amazing, more advanced, more beautiful, maybe even more peaceful, and that it was stolen from us.
And at the end of the day, theories like this one, they live in the gaps, don't they? They pop up when the official story just doesn't seem to add up for some people, or when trust in the institutions that are supposed to tell us the truth just isn't there anymore.
And that kind of leaves us with one last big question to chew on. Whether you think this theory is fact or fiction, it does one thing for sure. It makes you look at the world around you a little differently. It makes you wonder what else might be out there. What other huge pieces of our story could still be lying, literally, buried right under our feet?